Thanks for joining us for our first episode of Lincoln to Local for the 2024 legislative session. This week, we caught up with Steve Thompson, who breaks down a little bit of what happened at the state capitol during the first week, and even a couple of bills that Farm Bureau already has their eye on. All right, Steve, we kicked off the first week of the 2024 legislative session this week, and it kind of started with State of the State on Monday. We want to give us a little recap of how that went and what you thought about it?
That's right, Rachel. It was a very exciting start as usual, kind of the biggest political theater we have on the state level is when the governor comes in for his State of State address on the first Monday of session. Each side of the chamber, both the House and the Senate, meet in joint session in the House chamber, and so it is jam-packed. There's a lot of dignitaries, a lot of cabinet secretaries, and Supreme Court justices, all member of family of legislators and elected officials are there, and even maybe a protest or two in the rotunda. And so it was very exciting to see the governor unveil his agenda for the year, and a lot of focus on tax cuts, which we kind of expected, and that while we certainly appreciate lower taxes, our members are concerned a little bit about how if we reduce income tax, how that might negatively impact pressure towards property taxes in the future. So we're a little bit nervous about that, but we're part of the discussion there. He went through several topics, including education and also some of the things that we deal with the tribal jurisdiction following the McGirt Supreme Court decision. So we've been very engaged in that, as most people know, and so we're excited to work with the governor's office and both chambers of the House and Senate. So it was a very exciting day. It's kind of, we always joke, it's the first day of school at the state capitol, and so everybody got to reintroduce themselves and find out where all the offices were at. And so it's kind of the kickoff to a 4-month sprint at the state capitol for everybody.
For sure. So kind of with that being the first day of school in a way, what are our lawmakers up to on the first week of session? I mean, I know they don't just hit the ground running necessarily in every aspect. So can you give our members just kind of a little peek into what's going on at the Capitol?
The first week is unique because it's a little bit pomp and circumstance like we mentioned, but then there's also some actual committee work that goes on. But it's fairly inconsistent because not all committees meet the first week. But starting Tuesday afternoon with the House Agriculture Committee, we really went to work hard, and then all the way through Thursday on the Senate side with the Energy Committee, there were probably about a third of the committees that met and took up significant legislation, and then there's just lots of side meetings and going over legislation that's not queued up just yet to kind of answer questions and find out, both from the legislators asking the stakeholders in that, and then those of us that are trying to advocate, trying to ask legislators about ideas from all around the state. Because when we start off with 3,000 or 4,000 potential pieces of legislation, there's a lot of background checks you have to do on things and make sure that everybody understands what's going on, or as many people as possible know where Farm Bureau's position are on those bills. And so there's a lot of time outside of the actual session or the committee meetings where people are in their offices, and that's where really most of the real work gets done. I know that we focus on when things are called up for action, but there's so much time spent trying to wade through those multiple thousands of bills and all of the stakeholders in that downtime, if you will, is not really downtime. And so that's where most of the activity really happens, particularly the first week.
That makes sense. So you said some of the committees got to work right away. I know we've seen some stuff come through the House Ag Committee, especially on poultry. Can you give us kind of an update on that?
Yeah, that's one of our priorities for this session. There's a bill that Representative David Hardin from Northeast Oklahoma is sponsoring. Went through the House Ag Committee this week, had a lot of questions, but passed 14-0. Basically, what it would say is that if a poultry grower in Oklahoma is in compliance with their Oklahoma Department of Agriculture approved nutrient management plan about how they run their operation, how they handle their poultry litter, how they apply it for fertilizer, or if they sell it to a adjoining landowner or somebody outside the watershed, and how those processes and procedures work that is governed by state law and implemented by the State Department of Ag. If a grower follows all of the rules and are in compliance with the law, then they cannot be held liable for any pollution that occurs, because unfortunately we've seen in the past a pretty high-profile lawsuit that went against the poultry industry where they were in compliance with all of the applicable state state laws, but yet they were still able to convince a judge that the poultry industry was responsible for alleged water quality issues. And so if the state is going to create a scheme with which we all have to operate under, if we followed the rules as they are put in front of us and the state has approved that plan, then you really shouldn't come after a producer for anything that happens from there. And so we feel like it's a common sense approach. We felt like, honestly, that's how the law really read behind the scenes before, and it was more implied than right up front. And so we worked with several industry partners this year to put that on paper so it's very clear. So moving forward, that it's clear that if we follow the rules as prescribed by the state legislature and implemented by the State Department of Ag, that's really all we can reasonably expect out of a poultry grower. And so hopefully that it creates a better business environment than what we've had, because honestly the state legislature and the Department of Ag need to decide how our growers operate, not through a courtroom. And that's been some of the frustration over really decades of what we've seen of making regulations through litigation, which is really just not the best way to do things.
Definitely. I'm sure poultry growers are glad to see that making progress. And so what's the next steps for that bill? It passed committee, you said? Yeah,
it passed 14-0. We were very excited about that, had a lot of questions, and that's one of the things that happens when a bill comes up the first week, let alone the second day of the first week, that it's fair that a lot of members of that committee had not had a chance to do a lot of work on that. So you probably get more questions in the early stages there than you do later on once people really know what's on the pages. So that will head to the full House chamber for a vote in probably 3 to 4 weeks. There's a chance it could come up a little bit before that, but most of their time is spent in committees now. But when we kind of get out of that cycle, it'll be queued to be one of the first things that heads to the House floor in 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks at the most, but probably around 3 weeks.
Got it. So what about on the Senate side? I know we saw an interesting water bill come through. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
That's right. Yeah, Thursday in the Senate Energy and Transportation Committee, our good friend Senator Brent Howard had a water bill that's really kind of maybe the most talked about thing that we saw at the Capitol this week that is geared towards a specific watershed in southwest Oklahoma, but we're just not sure yet what implications it might have outside of that. But it has to do with water metering and reporting to the State Water Board and possibly empowering them to take more action based upon how much water a permitted well is taking and where that falls within their allocated amount approved by the state. And then if they're using too much or if they're using the amount the law allows, but that there's a scientific determination that area just can't bear to use that much water, what do they do then? And I think it's caused a lot of concern amongst folks in the northern end of that watershed that they feel like they may end up having a reduced amount of water they could use for irrigation and other industrial purposes. Whereas I think it's some folks down around the Altus-Lugert Irrigation District, that's the senior water permit holder in that area, that feels like that perhaps there's too much water use on the northern side of that, and they're wanting to make sure that all that gets accounted for properly and everybody is following the laws. And if those laws aren't adequate, then maybe they need to be strengthened. But that has caused a lot of uncertainty about how that might affect folks. And so we spent a lot of time working with stakeholders to understand what that might do, how it would affect folks in that area, and how to best balance everybody's interest in an area of state that is historically fairly dry, but water is still the lifeblood of all the agriculture in that region. And so we're working through that process with Senator Howard and a lot of folks, and optimistic that a good product will come at the end of the day. We're just not sure what that'll be, and it's a very serious issue, and I know that both oil and gas and some other industrial interests are very, very interested in that. And so we're fortunate to have Senator Howard in that key position because he understands what farming is like. He understands Farm Bureau, and he's a very intelligent guy. And so we're excited to keep the conversation going with him. And I think that bill is probably going to be around for a long time this session, and it'll probably be fairly noisy, but it's a very important one to watch. And there was a packed house in the Senate Energy and Transportation Committee. I think that was the most crowded room we saw all week to hear those questions. But it was very educational, and we've had I bet we've probably had the first weekend, we probably had 15 meetings in 5 days about that particular bill with all the stakeholders, and I bet we have just as many next week too. So, but that's definitely one to watch. There's a lot of water legislation this year, but that's the one that really jumped out of the gates first and caught everybody's attention.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I know you and your team will be following that. So what's up next at the Capitol? The first week, kind of in the books at this point. Where do they go from here?
Well, next week we will have undoubtedly a very crowded committee schedule. I think every committee should meet next week, and so they'll do a little bit of floor work, more procedural things, and not as much actual time there. But every day they'll be in the floor just a little bit, and we'll continue with a whole lot of office visits. And on Wednesday we'll have several county farm bureaus there to visit the Capitol, and so we'll try to get them around to meet as many people as we can from their area. But that's one of the more important things that goes on right now is just making sure that the legislators know who's interested in what measure, and so that when they go to cast those votes, that they hopefully have a balanced picture of what they might do. And so we're going to see a lot of committee meetings and a lot of bills moving through. It may be one of the busier weeks of the session overall when we look back.
Yeah, sounds like it. So I know you said we have some counties coming to the Capitol next week. Can you kind of give a run through of how that works when counties come and visit, what you guys do, and how they can sign up?
That's really the most important thing that we do in our role as staff here in the Public Policy Division, working with the field staff and some others, is to be able to coordinate and host County Farm Bureau members when they want to come to Oklahoma City to visit the Capitol and meet their legislators and talk about issues important to them. And there are most days we can make that work. A few days are better than others. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are generally the best day because a lot of times they don't start till midday on Monday, and a lot of times on Thursday they leave out pretty early. But if we can get folks from around the state here on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll bring them into our office, usually give them an update about the most pertinent pieces of legislation affecting their area in specific and Oklahoma agriculture in general, and then take them over to the Capitol and kind of give them a guided tour around the Capitol to meet with their specific House and Senate members and a few other key stakeholders, and so that they can provide their feedback directly. And so that has worked very well the last few years. And honestly, it's the most important tool that our staff has to try to get the attention of the legislators is when folks from home come to visit them, they really pay attention. They see our team all the time, and we have a great relationship, and I feel like they're responsive. But trust me, they care they know they may see me tomorrow, so if they've got to run me off, they can do that. But they're not going to run off a constituent from home. So that is the biggest tool in our toolbox and truly that's our role, is to try to connect the legislators to the people at home and vice versa. And we're proud to do that with Farm Bureau members from all around the state. Definitely.
And it sounds like you guys can accommodate just about any size group. Is that about right?
There's certainly no group too small. We've had single members from counties come before, and sometimes we'll pair them with another county in their area. But the experience when you get 25 or 30 members, it's a little less personal, hands-on, but anything 20 or under, we feel like we can accommodate them well. Normally we're able to feed them lunch while they're here and get them back on the road on a decent time frame, but we do individual counties, we do groups of them. We're really fortunate to have a very active field staff that has done that so much, and they spend a lot of time with us at the Capitol that whenever our team is busy with this county or with this legislator, the field reps have gotten very adept at taking them around and making those connections, and they know where everybody's office is. So we're fortunate to have a lot of help, both from the public policy perspective as well as the field staff when it comes to those trips to the Capitol.
Absolutely. And is that something that just reaching out to your field rep is the best way to schedule it, or what do you all prefer?
I think that's the best way to do it. However, anybody that works on our team in public policy will be happy to help with that. But the field reps are really the point people for making that happen. And if you might not know your particular field representative, somebody in your county office most certainly will. And so whomever your best point of contact is there can arrange for that to happen. But the field reps are really the captain of those things on the schedule and work very hard to make sure that we get them everybody where they need to be. And frequently we'll meet here at the office and then carpool over there, so you don't have to worry about fighting the parking spots at the Capitol, and so they'll take really good care of you while you're here. But I would recommend reaching out to your field rep, or if you don't know who that is, maybe reach out to your county office, and they can certainly connect you.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. And one other thing we've got coming up here pretty soon on the 13th is our leadership conference. Would you like to give our members a little bit of a sneak peek, I guess, into what they can expect there?
I'm really excited about that. That's always one of the highlights of the early legislative session for us is bringing members in from all around the state. I think we have over 100 members RSVP'd for that so far, and I think we've got close to 40 legislators coming to dinner that night. But we'll start at noon on Tuesday the 13th with an update from our friend Secretary of Agriculture, Blaine Arthur, about what's going on with the Oklahoma Department of Ag, as well as what's going on all around the country now that she's in charge of the National Association of State Departments of Ag. She's been involved in a lot of international trade and a lot of Washington, D.C. visits. So she'll bring us up to speed on what's going on all around the country. And we also have a friend of ours that works for AFBF in their ag economist team coming to talk about some hot button issues from the Farm Bill funding to foreign ownership of land and a few other timely things throughout the day. And then we'll end with one of our spring highlights. It's kind of our legislative awards banquet, if you will, where we hand out our Oklahoma Farm Bureau Champion Awards to a handful of legislators for their work on behalf of rural Oklahoma and production agriculture. So we're excited to see a lot of members of the family and catch up there and then connect them that evening with their legislators. And then the next day on the 14th, we have a lot of counties staying over to come visit the Capitol. So it'll be an exciting time for Oklahoma Farm Bureau. Busy time, but very exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it's been a good week and got quite a bit to come. So, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time this week. Thanks so much.